into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to...
Welcome to Pod Damn America. Anders Lee here with my trusted comrade Alex Patak.
It's time for the news.
Jake's Flores. I just called him Jake's. Jake Flores.
It's like attorneys general.
Right. Well, that's what you'd say when there's multiple Jake Flores is. The Jake's Flores of the country.
Imagine? What a dream.
We couldn't find a Jake Flores to fill in out of all the Jake's Flores. For our leader today, he is indisposed currently, but we will be bringing you hot takes.
That's right.
On the news of the day, riffs, info.
That's right. When the what's the phrase I'm looking for? When the goose is away, the chicks come out to play. Is that what it is?
I've never heard that.
I think that's what it is.
Is a when baby goose a chick? Because I assume they were called something else: a hatchling, a gooseling, baby goose.
Hold on. A baby goose is a gosling, like
Duh,
Ryan.
I should have. How did I
So
not
the expression must be when the goose is away, the goslings come out to play.
That's right.
And that's what's happening today, people. We're talking climate. A bit of a spoiler right now. Looking pretty good.
Right. They solved it. They fixed it.
They fixed it, folks. No more worries. We're going to head to the beach at the correct times, and it's not going to be 70 in November anymore, which is confusing for all of us.
I've been thinking about today, like, what would it have been like? And I know you said this was structurally impossible, which is, probably the case. But say in, 1986 or whenever it was, when they did the first hearing, when they actually, for this hearing, they scheduled it intentionally in the House or Senate on the hottest day of the year, and they turned off the AC and closed all the windows to make it as hot as possible. And James Hansen, not Jim Henson, James Hansen, the climate scientist, comes in and he, maybe
Kermit
maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's the problem is he did
attire.
not. Maybe the problem is he was not. He did not communicate effectively enough. He did not get a Muppet or some sort of visual aid and show people the disaster of climate change.
An extinction event.
Right. That's basically what he said, but I don't know if they heard him or what have you. I mean, they definitely ignored him.
Feet about future generations.
But what if they had actually listened? How different would the world be today if they were actually like, okay, let's do it?
Oh. How different would it be in terms of politics or in terms of
everything?
Lives lost?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you would have to totally upend at a minimum neoliberalism, which was in full swing at that time.
Right. You initially told me about this, and I said structurally this is impossible to have happened even as a counterfactual. But I am interested in hearing more of your thoughts.
Well, I guess, I mean, they've been saying, obviously, I don't believe, you don't believe, no one should believe that the market can fix this problem. But if they had really... Because the Reagan administration was actually quite protectionist in many ways for U.S. firms. And if there had been some, solar company, and that's one thing that I wonder if the Democrats actually want to do this, if they want to take like some, because throughout history, there have been companies that have been like, new technologies, and the government has subsidized them and supported them, and then they've become sort of intertwined with the government, and they basically like the equivalent to an oil company, right? But it's like completely corrupt, like an oil company is, and funds politicians, and but it's for like solar panels or something, or windmills. Could they have done that at some point?
Well, we talked about that a little bit in the interview about the interventions you could have in a market system to save yourself are just not, the trigger is not being pulled. So I guess if the question is like, what if, there was an actual attempt to manipulate the market to save ourselves? I don't think you'd be feeling the effects of it yet, just due to the rate of technology. Like, I think even if everybody was on the ball about this, it would have to be just complete declining uses of fossil fuels, which I also can't imagine. But I think no matter, even if Kermit the Frog gave an amazing speech in 1986, I do not think we would be out of the woods yet.
Well, yeah, you would have obviously needed a political movement that was actually going to wrestle power from the capitalist extractive class.
Well, the issue of climate change is solidly linked to capitalism, because the environmental destruction that generates the collapsing of all of these nets that hold our lives together and the ecosystems of the world are destroyed by the market economy, which has unlimited extraction in every pothole of the world, taking everything out and turning it into boxes for you and your friends at Christmas. So like, if you don't change that, you are essentially asking the market to stop being the market, to which it cannot say yes, which is the fundamental problem we are in, which is what ways can you stall this confrontation? Which ways can you speed up the result to a more logical place where we can save ourselves? And that's the question we're going to be dealing with for some time here. What was we had some climate thing we wanted to talk about before this interview starts.
Justin Trudeau.
All right, Justy boy. J Street.
Look, can we squeeze in the little nugget of hope from this week, yesterday, that has me somewhat happy? It should have you happy, listener. The events in the nation of India.
I give you permission to squeeze it.
All right, I'm going to squeeze it in. We're going to do India, then Canada. Farmers in India have stopped these farm laws, and it's difficult to figure out what exactly these farm laws say because of translation issues. That's what I'm assuming. I probably could. I would just need to be literate in agricultural law. But these farm laws, basically, Modi has been trying to completely overhaul India's agricultural system and deregulate it a bunch, and it would be very, very bad for farmers in the country. So they've done a massive strike for, like, I feel like it's been over a year now, and they finally got him to relent and scrap these laws. So,
folks,
there's a lot of details here that maybe we'll do an episode about this about this soon. But like,
there's still working class power in India, folks. It's only gone here.
That's right. I mean, that's yesterday. Very bad news, obviously, about Kylie Rittenhouse getting
He's
off.
Just being Kylie.
That's what we're going to call him from now on, just because it annoys him.
Sure, you don't have to go to jail, but we're going to call you Kylie, like Miley Cyrus. You son of a bitch. On the Kyle Rittenhouse subject, I do believe we have talked the most we could possibly talk about his trial on other episodes, to which is to say, I am not surprised, but I am disappointed.
It's no good at all. Yeah, I understand. I don't think it's wrong for people to be shocked, right? Because it's such a blatantly ridiculous thing to get away with. But like, it just kind of blows my mind that the main takeaway from this for some people is like of all the things you could complain about with Kyle Rittenhouse, basically, and this precedent this sets for right-wing extremists doing murder,
right,
to left-wing activists. Your main focus and takeaway is on the fact that some German newspaper misidentified the victims as black. Like, that's it. Like, that's the big problem here.
Are people talking about this? I've missed this discourse.
Some people, yes, are very upset that not with the fact that he was found not guilty, but with the fact that the media has been colluding to divide us on race because they're lying to people that he killed black activists when they were really white, as if that really makes a difference. And like, as if there are all these people who think they were black and are somehow not going to be upset if they knew he killed
I
white
understand
people.
how the confusion happens there because it's a Black Lives Matter protest. And if you're in Germany, you're just like, the black lives have been taken. Put us
so
in the nose.
Right, and it's all international newspapers that what things got lost translation, and so they printed this, and some people, Glenn Greenwald, are saying that this is a big that this is a despicable case of the media, the U.S. media, lying to people and trying to push this left liberal agenda,
right?
Which is just kind of boggles the mind that is the takeaway you have from yesterday, but I guess.
I had not heard about the German part of it, but I think you are really getting on to the meat of the problem, which is in any specific political issue that people can take specifics and just target lock onto those, engage all of their pedantic machinery, and just completely obfuscate whatever it is anybody is talking about in terms of this trial, which, as we were saying on the other episodes, is not scary so much in terms of the fate of this one child, but is much more about the message it sends in the future to other protesters and to people who maybe think that they would want to show up and kill those protesters. But let's not think about it anymore because it's one heavy topic at a time today.
Yep. Think India. If you're getting down about that, if you're getting down about climate, which brings us to a little gaffe. This was funny.
Oh, this is a big one, folks.
Justin Trudeau in Canada was asked about how he's been basically drill baby drill for his time in office. And his rationale for that is, he says, and I quote, Canada is a major oil and gas producing company. That's what comes out of his mouth. And then he says, oops, I slipped up. I meant country. And really,
Justy,
this was very much a Freudian slip. And I don't mean that in a sexual way. One of the few things about Freud that's not about doing it is the Freudian slip, I found.
Paging Dr. Freud, Justy made the gaffe of the week.
Yeah, but he let out some truth because it turns, and I didn't realize this, but
metaphorically having sex with his own mother.
There you go.
In terms of misspeakings.
There you go. That's why I've never read Freud. It's just all about the sexual.
Oedipus. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like this is the one thing that's not about sex with Freud, although maybe it is too. Maybe he finds some way to. But so, as it turns out, Canada actually began as a company. It was just like England's little outpost, Britain's little outpost for extracting oil, and that's kind of what the common wisdom has been for several centuries. That's what you got to do if you're a politician. There, you got to let it happen, which a lot of countries do, but you don't have to do it and obviously, I think we should ramp down fossil fuels and oil entirely at some point. But if you're going to do it, the only way to do it in a responsible way and in a way which actually helps us survive, because if Canada is going to drill, they can really only drill like 15% of the carbon reserves, because they have a bunch in Alberta and they want to take out all of it. But if they do that, then we're going to be screwed. Like that means literal extinction for basically.
You can't burn any of it.
Right.
You can take it out if you want, I guess, just to hold it. Just to throw at your friends. I got the goop on you. You got the goop on you. That would be okay, but that's not what they're going to do with it. No one's saying that is. Right.
If you have a syrup shortage, maybe you can cut it with some of that oil. But
is this the misunderstanding? Do they just think it's syrup? Do you think it's like earth syrup?
They must. Those Canadians, right? They love to tell us how stupid we are, right, and how backwards we are. But hey, America wasn't founded on oil. It was founded on slavery, but wasn't as bad as Canada in that respect.
This one
So,
isn't about us.
yeah. They love to
Oil
do that.
isn't
They love to
syrup.
project and talk about how awful the United States is, as if we're like not basically the same country and they have like one small iota of moral superiority on us.
Right.
But basically, yeah. If you're gonna drill oil, then do it in a responsible way. The only way to do that is to have the public take over the oil companies. You can't keep this market system to keep going and going and going. It's got to be gone.
Right. And it's for these reasons we are officially giving Prime Minister Justin Trudeau the Pod Damn America Flub of the Week. You're hearing
Flub of the week.
Splat Flub of the Week.
But with that, we will hear some hopefully more constructive ways to deal with the climate crisis. There's going to be some good. There's going to be mostly bad, but you will be informed. With that, let's go to the interview. All right, we are now joined by... God damn it. We are now joined by Dharna Noor, who is a climate reporter with the Boston Globe and bylines in some other places. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
But you write for the Boston Globe, but you are in Baltimore. Do you just is your beat just cities that start with B's and you traverse between them, or how does that work?
Exactly. Next I'm gonna have to do like some Baton Rouge reporting. And what other cities start with B?
Brussels.
Yeah, Brussels.
Which is great. Actually, great segue, if I do say so myself, to the EU, which is in Brussels. Actually, not so great of a segue, but I'll make this work. EU in Brussels, international body, another international body met this week past couple weeks in Europe, in Scotland, COP26. You've been covering this. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the signs of hope? And what are the signs of despair?
Oh man. I mean, it's like pretty hard to not feel despair about these UN meetings in general, because they're always filled with like just such absurd amounts of bullshit. But I guess that there were some good things that happened too. Most of the good things that happened at the UN meeting actually had nothing to do with the UN meeting. I mean, like they were convened there, but like they were kind of external to the negotiations. So like a bunch of countries, not including the US, of course, signed a pledge to basically transition away from oil and gas, it's wild that that's like a big step, but it is. The
US did 26.
Yeah, exactly.
125 never came up.
Yeah. I mean, but for real though, actually,
what are they doing at the meeting?
They're trying to figure out how they can make money off of this shit.
Oh my God.
Really?
So stressful.
Yeah. It's really, really stressful. There were some good things that happened, but the actual agreement, well, whatever. It's like the agreement itself, there's like lots of bad things about it. There were some things that looked like they were going to be good about it that got watered down, but ultimately, like, I think one thing that's sort of like missing from a lot of the coverage and shit about this is that all of these agreements are basically not binding anyway. So like there's only so much that you can ever really do. So in some ways, like the least depressing thing about COP26 is that it's like not the most important thing. We don't have anything better, so that sucks, but
yeah.
Right. Like in New York, for example, we set our goals to transition our energy away as a state by 2025 or something. I'm going to get all the dates wrong, so do not message me about those. But there is actually no direction in the budget to actually meet any of the goals that they set. So
totally. Yeah.
This is like a step before that internationally on a much larger scale.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, it's really true. Like the promises themselves are pretty weak. And then also like holding yourself to like any sort of promise is, there's like no body in the UN that has the authority to do that at all. Like there's no method to enforce it. There's no penalties for like saying you're going to do something and then not doing it. There's actually not even rules for negotiating, which is wild. Like 26 of these conferences ago, like the US and Saudi Arabia and like all the OPEC countries basically like worked hard as fuck to make sure that there were no bylines that got on the books. So now everything is by consensus because there's no like, oh, we have to vote on these things. It has to be a majority, it has to be a super majority. It's just like a free for all, basically. But which is why like one country can refuse to do something and then it fucks up everyone.
Right.
It's really great.
It does get to the core of the issue that even if you had a bunch of idealists getting in these rooms together with no massive oil delegation, which I think we should talk about in a minute,
yeah, for sure,
as it's very relevant to the discussion. Even if you had a bunch of bright-eyed, futurists together in a room who said, we're going to get rid of coal by 2025 internationally, the part where the rubber actually hits the road for all of these countries is completely off of the table because even though the general awareness people have of the scope of the problem, I think is emerging in that people are taking this more seriously than they were maybe 10 years ago. But it doesn't change the fact that the world economy is still entirely based off of being able to burn the resources we're getting from extractive industries. So even if on paper, it behooves you to stop burning oil. If 60% of your country's economy is oil, you're just going to keep doing it because it's suicide to stop.
Yeah, 100%. And I know that, we can talk more like specifically about this, but that's also why there's so much focus on like any solutions that don't require a change of business model at all, right? Like it's all about, how can we keep actually burning oil and gas at this rate? How can we keep extracting and then just like fix it in post, basically? So
we're internationally fixing it in post. That seems that's the overall mission statement we've been going with.
Exactly. That's COP26, fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post.
Well, I'm curious, like what COP1 was like. Like what? You talked about that a little bit, but like back then, did it seems like there was no sense of urgency, or maybe they thought they were kicking the can down the road, and that's what we're continuing to do. But like, was there any semblance of a notion that like we need to actually take care of this, or was it just kind of like we'll set up some some market-based solutions that 20 years a new generation will pick up? Like what was the vibe even like back then?
I'm trying to think, was I alive? I guess I was like just alive. I was not covering COP back then, but I think that market-based solutions were like always part of a big part of the scheme. But I will say too, like there's always been nations that have taken this shit seriously. Like obviously if you're the Maldives or like Seychelles or like a tiny island nation where that this is a question of life and death for you, you have a way bigger incentive to take it seriously. The problem is that those are like not the leading economies, right? So it's really, really politically difficult for small nations who are on the front lines of this shit to actually like have any political power because they're totally dependent on big economies, which is a pretty horrible dynamic that I think we just see getting worse and worse and worse. But like that was definitely present at the early COPs too.
And it seems like the problem now is there's no real binding authority. Like, how do you change that? Is the only option like internal change within the powerful countries, or like what incentive would one of these summits have to actually enforce this stuff, and how would they enforce it?
It's a hard question because like part of the problem is that the like UN is an international body, so because of like national sovereignty, it's hard to enforce laws internationally. I think that one model that's sort of worth looking at is, there's been other international treaties to do other things. And I think the ones that have worked really well have kind of relied on basically trade, like ones that actually regulate industries. Like when nations work together to stop using like CFCs, the way that it worked was basically like, if you use these polluting chemicals, you can't sign on to this treaty, and people who sign on, or the nations that sign on to this treaty, cannot trade with nations that haven't. So you have like a business incentive. It's basically like you're regulating industries directly that way by being like, either you get on board with this or you can't trade, like, or you're economically fucked. So something like that, I think, would be really the only way I can think of to give the like Paris Agreement any teeth. But honestly, I mean, even if they did that, like, it's not, the Paris Agreement isn't binding. The only thing that's in these agreements that's binding is that you have to make pledges, but you don't actually have to stick to them. So
just for the sake of being controversial, a lot of times what you see written down about this kind of stuff is that the U.S. is not, or from a climate beat, not from like CNN or something, that the U.S. is not following through on its role it gave itself as the climate leader, that as Joe Biden likes to call us, because we're an economy with like less than 1% of our GDP in oil. We're fully industrialized. We have all the big buildings already. It should hypothetically be easy enough for us to start the ball rolling on scaling down and switching to alternate energies, or at least, making a plan to do that. And so there's a lot of like chastising, understandably, America for not filling that role. Do you think in a world where we were stepping up to that would actually get the ball rolling for this? Like, let's say America actually starts decarbonizing at a reasonable rate. Do you think like the EU and China and Russia start getting their own plans in order? Is everybody just waiting on us?
It's a hard question. I mean, yeah, I do think that like the US has a lot of potential to, obviously, it's like, the biggest global power there is. I think that the US does have a lot of power to influence like other nations, especially if it does that in a way that's like actually collaborative. If the US decided that it was going to, for instance, like work with China to decarbonize, instead of being like, our whole thing is just that we're going to like take down your solar economy and we're going to try to beat you, which it will never do. Like the US just does not have the same kind of manufacturing power that China
Despite
has.
The fact that our economies are tied together at the hip at this point, It would be suicide to do it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's stupid. That kind of collaboration, I think, is just like, I mean, not anywhere on the agenda, but that's what I think could really do it. Also, the other thing is that like the US is the biggest historical emitter, and also obviously we have tons of wealth. And so the other thing the US could do is like help finance global South countries and like poorer nations with their transitions. And that's something that the US really, really does not want to do, is like help other economies with their transitions. But
well, it seems too that like, conservatives will always, when they're confronted about this, the ones who acknowledge that climate change is real or might be real or something like that, they'll say, oh yeah, okay, but China, they're doing it worse. Their emissions,
they're worse.
Polluting too. But in reality, it's a much smaller scale than the U.S. Like we're just far and away the biggest polluter.
Well, they have way more people, is what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say too. Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about like emissions per person, there's just no comparison at all. Yeah, the US should really, really stop blaming other countries for pollution. But, it's a very easy way to make it so you never have to do anything, just like point the fingers at China. So,
yeah. Right, even if it was true, it wouldn't really change the end result of the conversation, which is that everyone, especially the fully industrialized economies, have to start doing this.
And is this, while we're on China, is this something they're already, I know it with Cuba, they are starting to help Cuba weatherize and develop solar power and stuff. Is that happening with Belt and Road and African countries, or like, are they doing stuff to get the ball rolling on alternative energy sources in the developing world while the U.S. is refusing to?
I don't know how much like actual financing is going into it, but certainly like China is developing the technologies that could end up being affordable. So I certainly don't think that like China is, internationally financing the way that it could be. But like, again, the difference between like the US churning out solar power or like solar panels and shit like that, and China is just like, we're no match. So yeah, I mean, that's something that the US could help with too, is being like, okay, we're going to put the money into buying the best and like most efficient technology from China, and then using it here and also using it in other places to help transition. But
right, the talking point that we've decided to go with for this administration is we're going to use the power of the free market to now start leveraging the transition into renewable energy, but we're not even doing that, because you could hypothetically start manipulating these things where we're investing in this technology and then it becomes the preferred one anyway. But the fact that we've already invested so much in fossil fuels, which, as we were saying earlier, it was not even part of the international conversation at these things until this year somehow.
Totally.
You are at a loss for all that stuff you already dug out of the ground. And that money's paid for, so nobody wants to do it.
And I mean, and still getting paid for. Like the US invests like what, $15 billion every year in like just direct fossil fuel subsidies. It's like, it's not all, I mean, definitely like part of it is the sunk cost shit, but a lot of it is like still happening now. And it's because, I mean, as you said, it's because all these fossil fuel executives are right there to like advocate for their own interests. So
right. If anything, I would like to talk about like what actually happened this week, like in specific terms. What did we decide to do at this international conference that happens?
The mentioning of fossil fuels in the pledge is, or in the agreement rather, is like pretty interesting. There was some talk of some language that would say that we need to phase out coal. At the last minute, China and the US, and then they made it look like India led this, kind of reworked that. So it says phase down. So it's like in terms of real things that are happening, I think the one biggest thing is that all nations have to update their commitments by the end of next year for 2030. So like, how much are we going to reduce our emissions by 2030, and how are we going to do that? Again, you know, if all you have to do is make your plans and no one can actually hold you to that, that's not huge. But that's, I think, a bigger deal in some ways than just saying fossil fuels or like mentioning fossil fuel subsidies in the agreement. I mean, a lot of the other shit that happened, like agreeing to phase out methane, or like the US and China making some vague agreements about like working together to take on the climate crisis or whatever. Those things can be good, but in terms of the actual agreement, like not, I mean, I don't think that it's going to amount to all that much.
Right. Setting a goal to have a talk later where we set an actual goal then. Wouldn't that be cool? So something that's been getting written about a lot this week is that at COP26, the biggest delegation there, if you take it united, more than representatives of one individual country, the delegation from extractive industries was the largest entourage at the entire thing. What are they? I don't want to just say what are they doing there, because I understand in theory, like you want to have the people who make energy at the table to let them know, in theory, if we're all on paper working together, hey, this is what our plan is. What do you think about that? But it seems like their role is to kind of just talk us down from getting too hasty. Like, are there any speeches that like go against that? Like, was Exxon or BP or something getting up and being like, first of all, I would love to tank my own company, and we're gonna do it.
Honestly, I'm sure that they did say that kind of thing. They can say whatever. Like, I'm sure that
I do it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure that there were executives there being like, you know, we actually want to like make it so that we can't have our business model anymore. But they don't do it. I mean, there was reporting in like 2018, I think it was. I think Kate Aronoff found this for The Intercept, that Shell helped write part of the Paris Agreement that like is basically, you know, the like carbon markets thing where you can keep emitting at whatever rate, but you just like pay for some projects somewhere else. You get like carbon credit somewhere else for green projects. So it's not even like, you know, they're there like advocating for their own interests, and they have a direct say a lot of the time in exactly what comes out of these agreements. So yeah, they can talk all they want about like phasing out oil and gas, but in practice, that is not the kind of shit that they're actually working to get into international treaties.
But they have been very good at making it look like they are doing this. I remember, you know, BP famously.
Beyond petroleum.
Right. Did they ever move beyond petroleum, or are they still using petroleum?
Yeah. It's all, I mean, also like there's tons and tons of people who have done research on this and like done their own analyses of this. But if you look at basically every oil major's energy plan, every oil company's energy plan, really, there's so much talk about like moving away from all of the like bad things and building out all the new things, but they're all basically just about expanding natural gas. Like that is the majority of what oil companies are trying to push as being clean still, like now when natural gas is like the leading contributor to emissions still rising, and also other things, obviously, like these carbon trading things, the carbon capture and storage stuff, which doesn't actually exist,
Right.
Like, yeah, I definitely want to
about that. That does seem like what we are all hinging on is we're having this meeting where the plan is essentially something that no one believes will work, and that we will find a way to make money off of degrowthing the world economy. And at the same time, when it doesn't work, we'll have this backup with like a Batman style device that we're deploying into the atmosphere that's just sucking all the carbon out and fixing everything. Everything goes back to 1950s temperatures. Is there anything like that, even sort of in the works?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely there's definitely people who are there have been carbon capture plans that actually exist, not at scale at all. And I think, I don't know, I've like sort of come around to the idea that like we do need to invest in some like kind of research and development of this technology, but not for the oil industry, right? Like at a certain point, you have to figure out how to also decarbonize like steel and cement and all these other emitting industries. And maybe carbon capture and storage will have to have like a place in that. Obviously, you shouldn't be able to make money off of it. It should be publicly owned and like democratically controlled if it does exist. But the idea that you should be able to use that for energy when we already fucking know like that we can get energy from the sun and from wind and shit like that, it's just like absurd.
Well, what I've heard is that for carbon capture to actually make any sort of significant dent, you would basically need to clear Greenland and make it in the entire fucking country there into just a one big carbon capture thing. Is that an actual are they actually going to do that and just like, you know, make a new Israel for green people who live on Greenland or something?
Israel for windmills. It's going to be tough because a lot of Greenland will have melted by then.
Yeah, it's true. God, I'm trying to imagine, like, where would you even do that where it would be safe from like the extreme weather that's going to get so much worse? I mean, the answer is like, are they actually going to do it? I don't know. I mean, like, if you, at a certain point, if you throw enough money into anything, like, it can happen. I no longer feel like this is totally impossible. I mean, but the question is like, do you want that, or would you rather have, something that's actually like dealing with the local impacts of extraction and like, is fostering like a better and more just economy?
Right.
Like, that doesn't mean that there can never be any carbon capture. Like, it just means that that's not the solution at all.
Oh, you absolutely need it. The question is like, can we just do full capitalism mode, not cutting off any of the stuff we're addicted to that's destroying the planet, while just having these machines on the background keeping us alive?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is no, for sure. Well, you're putting out too much.
Well, one thing that, at least this is the way it's been portrayed in mainstream media, that Biden really wanted to go into this summit with the BBB pass, with the Boston, Baltimore, Baton Rouge Act signed into law.
That's what it stands for.
Yeah.
That's right.
But that didn't happen, and he also had to sign off on this this leasing deal for oil drilling. And the way it's been portrayed is like, oh, this is so embarrassing for him. Angela Merkel is going to give him the side eye and all this stuff, and Macron's going to be like, dude, what are you doing? But do they actually care that he's not coming in with anything? Because like, it seems like there's not a ton of urgency on the part of other like global north countries either. So like, is it really that big of a deal on the international front that this didn't get done?
I mean, is it actually embarrassing? I mean, yeah, sure. I think it's actually embarrassing. I also think it is actually really bad.
Yeah.
It's
but no, I
definitely
don't.
a big deal.
Yeah, it's definitely
right.
bad. But whether or not like Angela Merkel actually cares, I don't know. I'm sure that she can like laugh about it, but it's not like she's fucking doing anything either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the amount that like any climate action at these treaties sort of hinges on what the US is willing to do is just absolutely wild. Like, the US is such a major bargaining power at these things and often gets exactly what it wants. So, yeah, I mean, if Biden had the BBB and could have been like, here's all the commitments that we can actually make that I know that I have the authority to make, the Senate isn't going to be able to like strike down, then, maybe we could have had some better negotiations.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the UN we're talking about. If the US wants to do something, this is the place to do it. We have veto power. We're the only one who gets any ideas through over there.
The key part is wanting to do it, yeah. But we're talking today on Saturday, the latest iteration of the BBB has passed the House. Do you think it's going to pass the Senate at all? And if it does, will it be? And how bad is it going to be whittled down from its current form if it managed to get through back through the Senate?
Oh God! I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but no, I think it's going to be terrible. I mean, like pretty clearly, I think it's gonna be terrible. But I really, really, really hope I'm wrong. It's already just like so deeply inadequate. This is the thing about everything, right? It's like you can have historic new investments and they can just totally be utter shit compared to what we actually need. So there's all this talk of like, oh, uncharted territory, more spending than we've ever had before, which is true. And also is like just so far from being enough. So this is already inadequate. And I think, yes, we'll definitely get worse if it passes at all.
It's that catchphrase, right? Because it's historic levels of spending, but like whenever there's an election and it's a historic amount of voting, none of this stuff is being held to scale. Like the amount of spending happening to create the New Deal was a bigger. It definitely had a bigger impact than the size of deal we are looking to pass here.
100%. Yeah, totally. Yeah, God, the press loves to. I can say like the press, but now I work for the Boston Globe, so I'm the press. But yeah, this like idea that this is FDR levels of anything is just, I mean, just actually like factually completely incorrect, right? Like this is nowhere near, we're not looking at anything near that level of spending or like jobs programming or anything.
I mean, I'll be surprised. The people in the New Deal felt a tangible impact from like the WPA out there doing things. I will be very surprised if in 2023, my life is shaped by the BBB moving around the US. I can't imagine, I don't know. I'm working at the BBB plant somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff in the current form of the bill that I think could be like not transformative, but notable for people's lives. It's just obviously like we have to wait and see if any of that actually makes it into the final bill. And I don't know. Maybe you're just catching me on like a bad day because I'm hungover or something, but I feel pretty pessimistic about it. So,
well, yeah. I mean, it seems like the problem is that it looks like a big price tag, but that price tag is over several years, and with the climate stuff, most of that price tag is carrots, if you will. It's tax incentives, which we've seen that movie before. It doesn't really make a tangible impact. You got to grab the market by the throat and take it over. But totally. They do. One thing I'm kind of encouraged by and we'll see if this makes it through the Senate, and it's not a foregone conclusion that anything's going to get through the Senate anyway. But the CCC, the Climate Conservation Corps, we got BBB, we got CCC, and that is inadequate, right? But the fact that it is public works jobs,
definitely.
Is somewhat encouraging that you would actually have young people primarily who are getting paid by the government to do stuff about climate change. Do you see some hope in that, and maybe states and municipalities seeing that and picking it up?
I mean, I I agree. I think that it's the best thing that's in the bill. It's direct spending. It's like, real employment opportunities. It's modeled after something that was actually really successful, even though it is a tiny fraction of what the New Deal version of it was. But yeah, I mean, I think it's great. The problem, though, is that that's one of the things that especially Republican senators have been just like screaming about in this bill. And I think that they could certainly have some sway when it comes to folks like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. So yeah, I think it is one of the best things in the bill. And that also means that it is maybe one of the things that is at the top of the list if things get cut, which is awful. It should be way bigger, could be actually transformative, could like make people's lives better, not just in like a climate sense, but also like it's really good to have public jobs. It's really good for people to be employed and like do things that are meaningful. Meaningful work is important, but I don't know. I'm not feeling. I would love to see any version of it get passed in the bill, though, for sure.
After COP26, there was this oil lease sale that you wrote about for the Boston Globe. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. It was the biggest offshore oil and gas lease sale in U.S. history, which is wild. It came as part of this like offshore leasing program that started under the Trump administration in like 2017, I believe. And the Biden administration basically says that they had to do this because, when they first came into office, when Biden first took the White House, he had this thing where he was going to put like a temporary halt on selling new oil and gas leases on public lands. Some Republican senators sued him for it, led by the not senators, attorneys general, sued him for it. Federal court ruled that they were right. And indeed, Biden did not have the authority to put a moratorium on oil and gas leases. So the Biden administration is basically like, okay, that means that we have to comply with this court order, which means that we have to keep selling oil and gas leases. But I talked to a bunch of legal experts who were basically like, that doesn't make any sense. The order rather didn't say that you have to sell anything. It just says that you can't put this moratorium on there. But like, that doesn't mean that you couldn't have just refused to do this on other bases. Like the fact that maybe they're not even going to sell, or the fact that they will completely destroy the climate.
Right.
So.
It's the Biden bread and butter, which is having principles, and then the moment anyone objects to them, just completely giving up wholesale and doing whatever makes the kids stop yelling.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, I think the thing is that I've gotten some people have like kind of hit me up about this article and been like, well, it would have been political suicide for them to not do this. And like, yeah, it maybe would have been really politically difficult. I'm not saying it would have been easy. It's just that it would have been possible, and that you would expect people to actually like keep their promises when it comes to like the greatest existential threat that humanity has ever faced. But, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't have like gotten wrecked in courts after that, whatever, it might have been really hard, but they should have done it anyway.
This is a man with like 35% approval rating right now.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not just swing for it? It's a big deal.
And it's not like, Republicans have ever, I guess not ever, but it's pretty common for Republicans in power to ram through unpopular things that they nonetheless get elected on.
It's almost the whole point, debating.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. Also, like, man, there's a whole, coming back to the carbon capture thing, there's a whole other part about this oil and gas lease sale where like it's entirely possible that some of these leases won't even be used to drill. They'll be used to, oil companies might try to use some of these to store carbon underneath the ocean instead of trying to extract oil and gas from them. There's some good reporting in that. Yeah, it's wild.
What is it going to do under there?
Just sit there and like
create
probably
sea monsters? Or?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, yeah, probably. There will be some kind of like Gulf Loch Ness monster, I'm sure, that comes out of this. But yeah, that's like a whole other, because like oil and gas are not even good investments right now, right? Like Trump tried to have a big lease sale in the Arctic right before he left office, and it just like totally bombed. Nobody really wanted to buy these leases in the first place. Yeah, now oil companies got to get creative about what they're going to do with all of this property. And part of what it seems that they might try to do is store carbon from other oil projects underneath the ocean.
how do you do that? I don't understand. Like, do they have
I
a
don't think
big reverse well and it shoots oil back down? What is happening?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, they would have to. I mean, they would have to. First of all, they'd have to make the carbon capture plants that don't exist yet. Then they would have to inject that carbon into the Gulf of Mexico and somehow keep it from ever coming back. I mean, the answer is that like the technology to do this does not exist right now yet. We'll see, maybe one day, but definitely doesn't right now. Also sounds really bad and dangerous to me, but you know.
Well, the starting point of the conversation, this is one of the first things you learn when you look into climate change stuff, is that we cannot afford to, while staying under a livable ecosystem, burn the oil we've already dug up. So digging more is you're going and getting the oil and then fundamentally cannot and should not use it. So I am surprised. I intuitively understand how it makes sense, but like I am surprised that people are still buying these assets anyway. How did the sale go, I guess is my question.
Exxon was the company that bought up the most leases. I mean, they sold, like it didn't tank the way that one in the Arctic did. There also just hasn't been as much pressure to stop drilling in the Gulf as there has been in the Arctic for various reasons, just like how the sort of climate movement played out. But I mean, yeah, whether or not actually anyone uses these assets to drill from is a completely different question, right? Like, again,
do you think it affected the sale that we're closer to the Honda days?
Yeah, probably. I'm sure that was the defining factor.
Okay, you're on the record for this.
Beyond the days. Well, it seems like your beat is more national, but I am curious because you do write for the Boston Globe. What you make of new Mayor Michelle Wu's Green New Deal for Boston? Is that something cool?
It seems like something cool. It's very early yet, I think, to tell how much of it she's going to fight for and how it's actually going to play out. But I mean, already on her first day in office to, make moves for free public transit is pretty amazing. And I will say that, like, I don't think that the most important thing, obviously, about a politician is the way that they speak, but I think it's important for someone trying to sell a Green New Deal to like be able to link for people the idea that like climate policy can actually make your life better. Like it's not about austerity.
Right.
And she does seem to be doing a pretty good job of that. So I don't know, I guess to be determined, but it is cool that she got elected in the first place. So.
Yeah, that's kind of the big hope for me is local municipalities in general for this stuff, because it just does not seem like the federal level there's going to be anything approaching a Green New Deal passed anytime soon. But
or in context of COP26, the international level.
Right.
Because when you watch this big meeting, people are losing their minds on the internet this week. I don't know if you follow climate people, but there's a big debate. I would like to get your opinion on this of just like despair politics, because if you're a climate agitator and you're someone who's trying to get everyone to be active about climate and go do activism or politics for climate, you need to be severe about the stakes and what everything means. But especially after big events like this happens, where there's an international meeting and everything almost seems like it's moving backwards, the discussion then becomes like, are you scaring everyone into a state of being catatonic? Like, where is the line between being helpful and being destructive, I guess?
To be totally honest, my opinion on this is that, like, I think it's bizarre that there's an entire like cottage industry devoted to like trying to message properly when what we actually need is material change. Like I do think that there are definitely more and less useful ways to talk about the climate crisis. Like I think that there's more and less useful and more and less like, kind of understandable messaging. I don't think that being unnecessarily catastrophic about things is a solution to anything. But I also think that like occasionally I will see debates like this veering into the territory where you basically are just like telling people to calm down for no reason, or like kind of like tone policing the way that people talk about climate change, basically. And I'm like, you should also allow people to be freaked out and scared because it's really fucking scary and awful. I don't know. I guess I'm like, it's not that it's not interesting how the messaging works. I just kind of feel like it's pretty clear that the messaging is not, so far, none of it has really been effective. And it's pretty clear that like changing how we talk about these things is not going to be the defining factor. So I guess my main feeling is like, let people live.
Right. Yeah. It does. And it also seems weird to take this thing that is fundamentally terrifying and tell people to stop yelling about it.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just my background in the arts, but I think there is no amount of screaming that is too much about this issue, because there still is a sizable chunk of the population that does not have their mind wrapped around it. Like, this is not an abstract concept. This is something you will be experiencing, your children will be experiencing, and it's the defining issue of their lives.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. I have been a climate reporter for years now, and I still find myself like, I'll learn about something new and be like, I don't know if I can get out of bed today, actually. Like, this is even worse than I thought it was. And it really, I mean, it really is that bad. Everyone should not just like freaking out about nothing. And I think, it's weird to tell people to stop yelling about something so important.
So the middle ground where they get out of the bed, but also are very aware that they could have stayed in the bed. I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is, like, as you said, making this part of people's lives. And I think, yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, it starts at the local level, actually, like using public money and authority to create this industry that the private sector just has not done and cannot do. If we can do that, and enough people from different backgrounds see that there are jobs that don't have to come from the private sector, and they're making people's lives better, and they're making the world inhabitable for future generations. I think that's probably the strongest message that we could hope for.
Yeah, I totally agree. I personally would like nothing more than to see climate policies that even people who are like complete climate deniers want, right? Like, I want the things that will make people's lives so much better in the process that you can't even, like, whether or not you know anything about like greenhouse gas emissions, or even if you're like not afraid of that at all, you just like can't help but want the jobs and like the transit and the better housing and shit like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The game does seem to be getting local power, and then later hopefully transitioning that from the bottom up into something that can be directed from a bigger structure. Because I mean, just from the way that politics plugs into people's brains, like the state of Florida collectively should be all on board reducing carbon, but they're probably the biggest ones against it somehow, just due to the way the game plays out. So it does start where you live, and programs in your city and your area in general, your state.
For sure. And I also think that like part of the reason, right, that so many places that are so deeply dependent on oil are also so susceptible to climate denial is because it's like entire economies are tied to these industries, right? Like, even if you work as like a school teacher, like at the secretary at some public building or something, if you're like main tax revenue, if your main tax base is the oil industry, if you live in Texas or something, then like even a teacher's job is essentially tied to the oil industry. Like, and they do this on purpose, right? Like, your interests are completely wrapped up in the oil industry's interests. And so obviously, like, it's really difficult for you to think about anything that would dismantle that industry. And so I think that's why it's as important to sort of like come up with the economic alternatives as we're transitioning away from oil and gas, versus just being like, I mean, obviously we need to like shut down the plants and stuff too, but the other part of it is just as important, I think.
Right. And yeah, reaching out to those people. I know we talked about this on the show. I feel like this was maybe a year ago, but there's been an effort to organize directly, like, I think specifically people who have been laid off by the energy industry. What kind of efforts are you seeing in that? And, maybe the existing employees of energy companies, is there a way to break through to them on an organizing level?
Those people got to be depressed.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's also like there's so much animosity, I think, towards anybody, and I like for reasons I guess are sort of understandable, but there's so much animosity for anybody who has anything to do with the oil industry that I think so often people will like, not have sympathy for someone who is just trying to fucking do his job and then gets laid off. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely some good efforts. I mean, speaking of Texas, down there's been some pretty amazing organizing through the Texas AFL-CIO with this program called the Texas Climate Jobs Program, where basically like, I mean, pretty like explicit leftists kind of organized for this massive proposal, like a green jobs proposal that the entire Texas AFL-CIO, including people who work in like the energy industry, endorsed. Yeah, which is pretty cool. I mean, I think it's pretty incredible. It's like very intuitive, but also I think kind of surprising that jobs leading climate programs are even, desirable to people who work in the industry. Nobody wants to work in a dying industry. They just also don't want to like have their other option be working at Dollar General or whatever. So.
Right. And as they say on cable news, nobody wants to work in general. Busy taking selfies at Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to
That's what
the
I
goddamn
do.
job.
Right.
I personally love to take a selfie at Starbucks. Be in the cup.
Yeah.
I write my funny name on it. They spell it wrong.
That sounds good right now, actually.
Oh my God. They have this thing called the salted caramel cold brew where they just like inject 100 grams of sugar directly into your coffee, and it's
I
the
drank
best thing
that
I've
once.
ever
It was
And
had.
also
disgusting.
some sodium.
It's so fucking good, dude.
I saw, oh my God, this is like the most horrible thing I will ever say. I saw an ad recently for some pistachio flavored Starbucks drink. And now every time I hear Starbucks, I'm like, I want to drink that fucking pistachio thing. I can't remember the last time I went to Starbucks,
pistachio.
but I want the fucking pistachio
That's
thing.
great marketing. It's their logo's green, pistachios are green. It's stuck in your.
Y'all are getting paid
brain,
for this right now, right?
Right by Starbucks.
We should
Yeah.
be.
We're
Yeah.
a big
Clearly.
podcast.
We should
I guess
nationalize Starbucks. That's what
I
it is.
do feel
Clearly.
like I have to bring up that when I drink this drink, I feel how I imagine a car feels when it gets its oil changed.
Yeah. They put like a cocaine rim on the salted caramel cold brew.
It's a very expensive drink.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Dharna, thank you so much for coming on. Where can our listeners find you? And is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I tweet at my name on Twitter at Dharna Noor. I'm not going to spell that, but it's fine. You can figure it out.
I'll put it
We'll
in
put
the
it in there.
title.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
foolproof.
What do I want to plug? I write for the Boston Globe now. I also recently did I've co-produced a series of the podcast Drilled with the journalist Amy Westervelt, who's amazing. So if you want to be even more angry and sad, but also like learn some funny things, then you should listen to that if you feel like it.
Cool. Well, thanks
Great.
for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yep. So it's another week in the news.
Bad stuff. Bad stuff all around for the most part. But we are getting some humor out of those clowns in Congress. Paulie G,
Right.
which is his name, Mr. Gosar. You saw this video. It's been taken down, so I didn't get a chance to grab a peek. But basically, he did what some Gundam wing slams on.
He didn't do Gundam wing slams.
Okay.
He's a congressman who found a funny video, like we all do, of a Photoshop of the first Attack on Titan opening, where his head replaces the little. Do you know Attack on Titan?
No.
Oh, Andrew,
is,
it's a very political show.
Okay.
This is the show that is foremostly debated is anime fascist, because it's about
Really?
it's about this this world where there are these giant steaming meat giants, these meat trolls that roam the land, and they're the natural predator to humans. And the show is all about wiping them out. And then the implication because understandably, the people in the show live under a state of fascism as their entire society is re-geared to combating these titans who are their natural predators. The question is, because the guy who made the show made some comments defending the Japanese in World War II, and then through a certain twist at the end of a certain season, maybe implies that the Titans are a metaphor for Jews, which doesn't super track based on the things in the show. But I think people get lazy and just put the Holocaust in things because they're bored. That's my theory on it. But fascist nerds do love the show, and so somebody made a video that's the Attack on Titan opening with base chuds and Republicans over the good guys, and then like AOC and Nancy Pelosi as the Titans. So it's a video of like this guy murdering AOC over and over again, essentially, with like a broadsword, and she's like a big walk-in monster. And he shared it online, and then it turns out when you're a congressman, that is frowned upon. So that's the story.
Well, the question is, what would you have done if someone made this video of you? Who's one of your enemies?
First of all, any of my followers on twitter.com would share a video like this of me because they hate me and they don't want to see me shine the way I do. Just the way I act like I do as a Titan of the scene.
So they might make one of themselves killing you.
Right, killing, just to get their own clout. Like, it would be a clout move. And if it happened to me, I would laugh, because, like, I'm a cool guy. But if I'm AOC, I might be like, hey, stop encouraging people to kill me. People keep sending me letters that they're going to kill me. It's not funny anymore. And I get no letters about people trying to kill me, so that's just my privilege. And I totally get why it happened to him, but, like, I would be cool about it, probably.
Yeah, probably not a good idea to share it in any case if it's you killing someone else. If you're getting killed, then
so many people.
Oh, so it's not just okay.
Well, it's not just him.
So
it's like,
I thought it was
like Donald Trump's in there, I think.
I thought it was just AOC getting murked, but it's also other Democrats in Congress.
Oh yeah, it's all the big ones. They're getting their necks chopped open, steam's flying out, and the Republicans are Spider-Manning around. It's a pretty good video. I encourage you to give it a watch.
And so they found this, and they took umbrage to it, but that's because they just don't understand the great art of anime.
Because they don't understand anime, I'm saying.
And so Pauly G had to explain this to Congress, what anime was.
Right. And then they were like, stop sharing videos of you killing people. What? Why don't you know about this?
So, and if I'm not mistaken, he's been stripped of his committeeships. Is that right?
Right, which is one of the worst things that can happen to a person.
Well, can he still vote? Because this would actually be a good strategy if the Democrats are actually serious about ramming stuff through. Is you could do this to basically any sitting Republican congressperson. Just like find some death threat that they've made tacitly.
Right, there are Attack on Titan videos of every sitting Republican.
Right. And you could just dig those up and you could expel all of them from all of their committees and then do as you please. I don't know if that takes away their ability to vote, but
it's the Democratic strategy of the term, I think. Now that we've failed in every other environment, we have to resort to media terrorism. By digging up Simonsing all Republicans out of their jobs.
Simpsons writer Sam Simons.
Yeah, using online snitching to destroy their careers. I think if it works, we have to use it, folks. You have to take the tools that you have.
Yeah, I mean they're not doing anything else. But that's the thing. Like most things, they don't actually want to do this. They like having that bare majority.
Right.
They like losing.
They like watching the videos of their heads getting cut off. They think it's funny.
Right.
Yeah, check out Attack on Titan at home. We're in plugs
now.
now.
I want to watch this. It sounds very similar, though, to one of the only animes I have watched, Evangelion.
It is very different than Evangelion. If for no other reason than they don't run out of money 2/3 through and then have to make up an ending where they recycle pictures.
That was so. It was like some.
Which, as a
something out of Samuel
cultural
Beckett.
artifact, it's like crazy. We all decided to rewatch it, knowing that's how it ends.
Right. I couldn't get through that. It reminded me too much of like surrealist theater. I had to turn it off.
Yeah, no, this is much more straightforward. You can debate if it's fascist or not. It's a much more entertaining show for sure.
Okay, but how can you justify watching it if it's fascist?
Same way I do every day,
gotcha.
baby.
Checkmate.
Same way I do it every
Censured.
goddamn day of my life.
Alex Patak has been censured for watching Attack on Remember the Titans.
Attack on Remember the Titans.
That's right.
Where they use racism to defeat the Titans. Okay, other plugs. You can follow me on Twitter at Patak Test Kitchen, and maybe I have some exciting things coming on there. For example, we have officially rebooted our monthly DSA fundraiser stand-up show, Paid Protest, live at the Secret Loft every month in New York City. First show, December 10th. Okay, it's a hot lineup. You want to be there. We're supporting the New York for Cooney campaign that DSA is running. It's some nice stuff. It's going to be a hot show. I'm writing stand-up for it, which I haven't done since February 2020.
Check it out. Speaking of hot shows, if you're in Minnesota, where it is not hot, it is cold, but you can warm up with some laughs at Sisyphus Brewing, Friday, November 26th, 8 and 10 p.m. I will be there with Ben Katzner and a lot of funny folks. That's at Sisyphus Brewing, 8 and 10 p.m., November 26th. Tickets are $10.
Get out of the cold.
That's right. And last but not least, something I want to make sure we promote. We've been talking about Kyle Rittenhouse getting off, but not everyone is so lucky as him. There is a young man in Queens, New York, named Prakash Churaman, who has been detained unjustly, and Melinda Katz is like refusing to let him out. You can find more about that on his GoFundMe page, gofundme.com/free. We'll put in the links. Free Prakash. And he needs money. They need to raise money to pay for his legal defense. And because this is a very screwed up case, but we will link to that. Otherwise, you can find me at Anders Lee here on Twitter, Dursley1 on Instagram. Check out Redacted Tonight.
Okay, and that's going to be us for this week. Chop on, fellow travelers.